Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Urshan, and this is March Badness 2021, which was created by Derek's Horror Corner. So definitely check out his channel. And this is the Jason bracket. A lot of great matchups here, and just keep in mind that these are my personal opinions. But we're going to have a lot of fun, guys. We've got some great matchups to talk about here today, and the first one is going to be Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which many consider to be the best in the Friday the 13th franchise, taking on Joyride, which is a pretty solid slasher starring the late Paul Walker, and I believe it was Ted Levine from Silence of the Lambs. Yeah, Buffalo Bill himself. But I think that's going to be a pretty easy round, a pretty easy victory for Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, which was not the final chapter. Definitely one of the best sequels in the franchise, and you got Corey Feldman in there, of course, as Tommy Jarvis, a very popular character in the franchise. You got a real solid Jason and Ted White there, and some awesome effects from Tom Savini, the master of gore. Next up, you got Halloween H2O taking on Intruder, which is a slasher film from the late 80s, starring Sam Raimi, believe it or not, and his brother Ted Raimi, and a couple cameos from people like Bruce Campbell. But it's a slasher that takes place inside a grocery store. It's a lot of fun, a lot of great kills with some really nasty gore effects. But it's very goofy and kind of cheesy and over the top. So I'm going to go with Halloween H2O on that one. I think that's an easy victory. Definitely enjoy Halloween H2O. I feel like this film brought the franchise back to prominence, you know. When it was kind of starting to die off, you know. Halloween 5 didn't do very well in the theaters, and neither did Curse of Michael Myers, you know, so when you got Jamie Lee Curtis back in the mix, you know, that put asses in the seats, and, you know, people wanted to watch, and it was a big hit. Next up, we have Child's Play, the original from 1988. Boy, Child's Play has not fared very well in this tournament so far, has it? But we do have the original here, which is my favorite in the franchise. I think it's a good movie. I think it's a fun slasher. It's a good time. And you got Brad Dourif as the voice of Chucky, and you also get to see him, before he becomes Chucky, you see him as serial killer Charles Lee Ray. So that was pretty cool, and you get to see him possess the doll, you know, using the voodoo ritual. Oh, man. I always have such a good time with this movie. Child's Play is taking on Wrong Turn 2, which is a very popular entry into the franchise. You had Henry Rollins in there, you know. So that was a good time, but I am going to give Chucky the win this time. Chucky finally gets lucky, yes. So definitely going to go with Child's Play. It's the better movie for sure. Next up, we have Silent Night, Deadly Night, which is a classic slasher from the 80s. You know, that holiday-themed slasher. Going up against Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, one of my favorite horror sequels of all time, and I will defend it till the death, because I love this movie. I love the characters. I think it plays great homage to the original with some of the returning characters. And this movie's just off the wall. It's just nuts. It's batshit. You got Dennis Hopper. It's just off the wall. He's crazy. It's very gory. It's just so over the top and zany. I love it. So, that's an interesting one. Who's going to win? Because I really enjoy both of these. I mean, Silent Night, Deadly Night is just a classic slasher, you know. And it's such a good time. It's got some nasty kills in there, you know. Naughty. It's a lot of fun. You got that classic kill with Linnea Quigley getting hung up on the antlers. You get the dude getting decapitated as he slides down the ski slope. Awesome movie, but definitely gonna have to go Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 on this one. Gotta love Chop Top, played by Bill Moseley. Such a great character, and he does such a great job. And you got Leatherface returning. You know, you see him rip a dude's friggin' face off. It's insane. Next up, you got Scream, the original Scream, taking on April Fool's Day, another classic 80s slasher, with a huge twist, which was pretty controversial and is kind of polarizing in the horror community. A lot of people don't like that, but I just thought it was brilliant. I love the twist, and I think it's a really fun movie, and you got some classic 80s characters in there, you know. You got Biff from Back to the Future. You got Amy Steele from Friday the 13th Part 2. So definitely a good, fun movie. But Scream is going to get the win here, because Scream is just a classic, in my opinion. I think it's an excellent movie, and it just breathed new life into the horror genre when it was dying. Next up, we have the original Sleepaway Camp. Which I love this movie, starring Felissa Rose as Angela Baker. And Angela Baker is a character that I can really relate with, because when I was a kid in school, I was kind of a misfit, and I was very quiet and shy and reserved. I was the kid in the back of the class that didn't talk to anybody, you know, so I can relate to Angela Baker. I think she's a great character, and great idea for a slasher killer, you know. And this movie has some great kills. It's got some dark undertone, but at the same time it's got some goofiness. It's some definite 80s cheese, and that adds to the charm of it. Going up against a very underrated film, Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. I just think this movie is a lot of fun. I think it gets a lot of grief because of the ending, you know. Kind of went a little bit of different direction there, but really, I mean, it's got some great kills, you know. It's sleazy, but overall, I think it's fun. I love the characters. They're like crazy, over the top, but a lot of fun. So, with that being said, who's going to win this round? It's a pretty tough one, because I love both these movies, but I think Sleepaway Camp is the more important film. This is the original Sleepaway Camp, and it is a very original concept. I do love this movie. It's such a great movie. I think it's a classic slasher. Next up, we have what me and Derek feel is a very underrated film in the franchise, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. This movie has some of my favorite dream sequences in the franchise. A lot of cool stuff with cool effects. You got some of the best kills in the franchise, like the Roach Motel scene. That's awesome. You got some of the best Freddy one-liners. Elm Street 4 is taking on the Maniac Remake. Wow, that's an interesting matchup there. Maniac, I think, is an excellent remake. I think it's one of the best horror remakes, period. It's so well done. It's so beautifully shot. It's almost like art house, but with brutal gore, you know. It's very much a slasher, though, and it pays a lot of homage to the original Maniac from 1980. I think Elijah Wood has a great performance as Frank Zito, and his performance definitely rivals Joe Spinell. That's pretty close there. And this is like almost right there with the 1980 Maniac, which is my favorite standalone slasher. Whew, that's a tough one, because I love Elm Street 4 and I think it's so underrated, but I think Maniac is the better film overall. You know, it's so beautifully directed. I love seeing it from the perspective of the killer, you know, literally. The only times you see Elijah Wood is like if Elijah Wood looks in the mirror or something, you know. It's pretty cool the way they filmed it. Love it. It's got some nasty kills too, like the scalp scene with the blonde lady. It's nasty. Alright, moving on to the next round, we got Halloween 4, which is so beloved by the Halloween fans, you know. And definitely a classic entry into the Halloween franchise. You got Danielle Harris making her debut in the Halloween franchise as she's such a great character. Jamie Lloyd. You got Ellie Cornell as Rachel Carruthers, another beloved character in the franchise, and of course you got Donald Pleasance returning as Dr. Loomis, and he's fantastic. Halloween 4 is taking on the original I Know What You Did Last Summer, which I do enjoy this film. I think it's the best 90s horror movie outside of Scream, you know. It's the best, like, post-Scream horror movie. And there is a lot of kind of Scream style in there when you got Kevin Williamson involved. But you got a great young cast with Sarah Michelle Gellar, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Ryan Phillip, Freddie Prinze Jr. I love the story of it too, you know, when they accidentally kill this fisherman, but, you know, they don't want to go to jail for it, so they try and cover it up, and the karma of that comes to collect. Next round, it's going to be Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter, taking on Halloween H2O. Ooh, that's a good matchup. And I think most people would say Friday the 13th, the final chapter on that one. Because a lot of people love the ending of Halloween H2O, but they don't really love the whole movie as a whole. But I think it was a solid return to form for the franchise, and just the fact that it made people into Halloween again. You know, it made people want to watch Halloween, and it was a hit movie, so it brought the franchise back to prominence, and you had a great performance by Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode once again. So, Halloween H2O gets the win in that round. Next up is going to be Child's Play, the original from 1988, taking on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Which is definitely a polarizing entry in the franchise. People seem to either love it or hate it, but I love it, always have, and I always defend it, so Texas Chainsaw Massacre gets the win. And I'm sure that's probably a big upset to a lot of people, but Texas Chainsaw 2 wins it, baby. Next up, we have the original Scream taking on Sleepaway Camp. The original. Love both of these movies. These are classic slashers. But Scream gets the win. Scream is an absolute classic and is definitely the more important film. Like I said, I think it's the most important horror film of the 90s. And it's got one of the best opening scenes in horror history. Maybe the best. With Drew Barrymore there. Next up, we got the Maniac Remake. Taking on Halloween 4. Ooh. Now that's a tough one, you know. Like I said, Halloween 4 is very beloved to the fans. The problem I have with it, I do have a couple issues with Halloween 4. I think it's not scary at all. I wish it was scarier. But it's the performances that make Halloween 4 for me. It's the characters of Jamie Lloyd and Rachel and Dr. Loomis. That's what makes it good. I think if it wasn't for them, it would be kind of a generic slasher, you know. But that's why I'm going to make Maniac win this round. Yes, the remake from 2012 wins this round over Halloween 4. That might be a huge upset to a lot of people, but have you seen Maniac from 2012? This movie's freaking awesome. It's got some brutal kills. It's really, really well acted. This movie's awesome. You gotta see it. So next up we have Halloween H2O taking on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. Another real tough round For me, personally. It may not be for a lot of people, but for me it is. And once again, we are going to have, probably consider a huge upset, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 moving on once again. Yes, I love it. Chop Top Baby, as Bill Moseley played so well. I love this movie. Bring it all down. So big shocker there. Texas Chainsaw 2 pulling out the win. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is going to be going against the original Scream. Wow. I bet you guys never thought that would happen. So yeah. And this is going to be a real tough one for me. Man, I would love to say Texas Chainsaw 2, but Scream is a classic. I cannot go against Scream on that one. It's such a good movie. It's so well made. It's so funny. It's got such an amazing cast with David Arquette, Courtney Cox. You got Neve Campbell, one of the best final girls in history. Just killing it. Just a great cast. It's such a fresh concept. I love the movie within the movie. I love the meta feel of it. And Wes Craven just did a brilliant job directing this movie. It's scary. It's funny. It's just a classic. I love Scream. So Scream gets the win, guys. Scream gets the win of the Jason bracket. Yes, Scream. So Scream wins the Jason bracket, guys. That's it for this round of March Badness. And thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Urshan, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.